Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Swanson, and we're here with a special episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. We're here with Adam B. Levine, who's obviously the editor-in-chief, and we're also with David Johnson, who's the managing director of BitAngels, as well as a board member of the Mastercoin Foundation. And the last member of this panel is Peter Earl, who is probably most famous for his economics articles written in the last couple of years. Today's topic is about Goxcoin, which is a new project that I think David could probably explain best. David, can you explain how this fuses in with the Mastercoin protocol?
We're looking for ways to leverage the new technologies that Bitcoin gives us to help the people that are sort of stranded as part of the whole Gox process. The core concept is to issue a coin that can track people's claims around the coins that they've lost from Gox, meaning that if you had an account which you had 10 Bitcoins in, right now sort of those records are all held by Gox. And the idea is for the community to encourage Gox to release those records so that they can be converted into these coins in order to be able to trade around that as an asset. I mean, we all know that the process, there's a lot of legal cases around this, and the process is probably going to take a very long time to work itself out. There are a lot of question marks around how the Japanese legal system is going to treat Bitcoins. And so this seems like an interesting way to help the people that had funds at Gox in order to track their ownership. If they're not optimistic about Gox recovering any of the funds, then maybe they sell this ownership. And whoever holds the claim when the whole Gox situation resolves gets the Bitcoin proportional to the amount that they held. Where the Master Protocol comes in is we're not interested in creating another blockchain. We're not interested in creating something that people have to mine. And so we can use the Master Protocol in order to issue these coins and using Bitcoin as the ledger that keeps those records. And so we sort of avoid all the complexity of having to have miners or a separate blockchain. And we're simply using this as a way to record these assets and then move them around.
Looking at the amount of Bitcoins that have disappeared from Mt. Gox, which is around 750,000 plus maybe 100,000 of their own, how many of these do you think you can legitimately track? How does that process take place? How do you know who's lost stuff? How do you keep track of that kind of database?
There's a couple of ways this can go. Either Gox can release the records to a third party, or they could issue these coins according to their records. And either way it goes, basically you have to have had a verified account with Gox. It's going to be based on the data that they have from the last moment in which they were in operation. And so there are already groups collecting claimants that have thousands of people that are making claims. And so this sort of offers those people a way to track it. We would think of this as an opt-in type of system. We're not going to force anybody to participate, but if you wanted to track your ownership in this way or trade your ownership in this way, then you could opt into this type of system and prove that you had this balance, and you would be issued those coins in proportion to the amount of your balance. So we're thinking of 1-to-1 ratio. So if you had 10 Bitcoins, then you'd be issued 10 Gox coins or recovery coins or whatever makes sense for this project.
That's really interesting. And I understand that Humint is tied in with this. And Adam, you are kind of spearheading that group, I think, as an advisor, right?
Yeah, I'm actually the chief visionary officer with the Humint group. And, in our normal day job, when we actually deliver on a product, because we're talking to a lot of customers, but we haven't actually come out with anything yet, we deal with brands and try to help them understand the potential of cryptocurrency as it basically exists for them now, because there are a lot of opportunities for, David brought up a really interesting point with regards to Mastercoin and the problems that it doesn't need to solve. We don't need a blockchain for something like this Goxcoin. We don't need mining for something like this blockchain. It literally, it's not proof of stake, so you don't want to go down that road. And so these meta coins, Mastercoin was a later addition to the project, and we realized that we needed a platform like Mastercoin because we didn't want to spin off a new blockchain, and we didn't want to manage all of these things. Or really, we don't want to do anything. We'd prefer that this be the plaintiffs handling it for themselves. Essentially, what we're doing is developing a proof of Goxed protocol that will let any plaintiff group or private recovery effort come to Humint with claims certified by the Japanese courts. That'll then mandate Humint to create the verified amount and distribute it back to the group who just submitted the claims. That means you can have one big recovery effort or a bunch of little ones, but they all use the same token, so anytime any coins are recovered, they're split between all holders of Goxcoin. With regards to Humint, Humint has been looking at these problems because there are a lot of different projects that we're working on that all surround these user-created assets. Because they let you essentially take all of the advantages of cryptocurrency and apply them to any sort of problem without having to worry about all of the other stuff.
So what kind of time frame are you guys looking at with, number one, releasing Goxcoin, and number two, actual getting the plaintiffs involved with this? Do you think this is a multi-year process, or is this something that's just going to be a short 6-week kind of project?
The project itself, I can see something like this continuing for 100 years, because if you think about it, we don't really know how many Bitcoins are even missing. We don't know if they're lost. We don't know if they're stolen. So those are things that could take years to work out. And the reality is that even if it's discovered that all of these were stolen and somebody else has them, this is a huge amount of value that's essentially going to be sitting there on the blockchain, and people will be watching it. You know, all of this stuff that happened on the blockchain is going to be untangled just because there's such a huge financial motivation to do so. So from a project perspective, you know, I can see this rolling out in something like 3 weeks once we have the information that's necessary. And this is another interesting point, is that there are people who are concerned that a solution like this could never work because mt.gox won't or can't work with us. And this is something we've talked about a lot too. But, you know, as was mentioned, you could do this through a private recovery effort. You know, you could have people who have claims to mt.gox band together and say, we're going to seek recovery on these Bitcoins that we verify that we have. And then they can create these tokens. So you could have, you know, multiple different essentially class action lawsuits or recovery efforts. So the process really works whether or not mt.gox is on board, and it can happen very fast, but it's important that the coins be given to the right people. That's like the most important part, and it is a tough problem right now.
Yeah, speaking of that, maybe you guys could answer this. How does the KYC work with that? I know that's probably at the bottom of the list of things to do, but let's say these people, you want to help out everybody, but what if you have people who could be held liable for various illicit activities? How do you handle handing out different Gox coins to people that you don't have a KYC on?
Everybody who is trading at Gox really should have at least basic KYC. So again, like this goes beyond my area of expertise. We'd have to pull in somebody who's on legal to talk about this too intelligently. But I can tell you that anybody who has a verified account at mt.gox should have gone through KYC, or they wouldn't have a verified account. So that's really the type of people that we're talking about right now, because it is easier to do that.
I see. Okay, so kind of like tranches. You want to start with somebody who could definitely verify who their identity is, that they actually had it. So this is, in a way, what we had was 6 years ago, where you had these defaults on CDOs, these different instruments. You had different tranches of debt repayment. So you would say the first level of bond holders would be these verified customers. Is that what you're saying, Adam?
Yeah, but the difference is that in a recovery like that, you're talking about people being paid back at different rates, whereas here we're just talking about people chronologically. So people who are harder to verify or take longer to verify will simply take longer before they get back the token, but the token itself is a claim on one Bitcoin, whether you got it at the very beginning of the process or at the end of the process. Now, of course, this is a recovery, so there's almost certainly never going to be one full Bitcoin given back to each of these Goxcoin holders. It'll be some fraction of that, but the point is that because it's in a deflationary currency instead of an inflationary currency, that's actually okay. You might wind up with more money at the end than you had at the beginning just because of that.
I see. Yeah, it's really interesting. And speaking of inflationary and deflationary, Peter, I got to bring you in here. The article I know you best for is your discussion on mudflation and economics and how faucets and sinks work in a digital world. What is your thoughts on this whole process with Gox coins and the entire Gox fiasco?
One of the things that struck me immediately was that this would probably be impossible to do in the world of hard money securities and derivatives. The flexibility of the cryptocurrencies allows you not only to put in place the sorts of sharing features that the cryptocurrencies do, but also it has to do with the essentially the network effects, and that the rules around and the system that value these types of assets, these cryptocurrencies, essentially make them more valuable in and of themselves. And it would be very difficult to accomplish this kind of recovery with a so-called fiat currency denominated with a paper instrument. It's a very hybrid type of thing we've got going on here that has some features of the recovery rate that you might find in a credit default swap. It's similar in some ways to a convertible bond, that sort of thing, which I think it makes it extremely compelling. What we may be creating here is sort of the wave of the future, or sort of, an example of how these types of things, when they occur in the future, if they occur in the future, will be handled.
Kind of like a secondary clearinghouse, a secondary market. Is that what you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, that's essentially what it comprises. One of the things I've been saying for a while now, as I've been a couple of years now, I've been following the growth of cryptocurrencies, in particular, not only Bitcoin, is that it's great that the Bitcoin economy has all these things happening in terms of places to consume Bitcoin and things to do with it. But one of the things to really make the economy of what I call the unstate of Bitcoinistan really vibrant and sort of, anti-fragile would be, we need things like auditors, specialized auditors. We need reviewers. We definitely need, raters and, people who fill a role like something like S&P would in the debt issuance world out here outside of the virtual currency world. But also, what we need are strong venues, voluntary venues to arbitrate and mediate controversies. States with their fiat currencies and their brick and mortar courts are not really going to be terribly sympathetic, I think in most cases, to controversies which arise of the cryptocurrency world. So those are things that we have to be thinking about as this process goes forward.
Interesting. So you're talking about maybe independent arbitrators and outside auditing and insurance. I know that's been kind of like the topic du jour. I remember reading an article recently about some company in Boston that's apparently insuring their Bitcoins. Does that kind of tie in to?
Absolutely. That would make a very sound accoutrement to what we're working on here. So not only do you have a way of helping make these economically injured holders whole, but also they have the right of recourse, and they have some way of, like I said, mediating or arbitrating, as the case may be, the controversy.
I see. Now, David, I know you've been working kind of as a side project with, I think it was general governance was one of your other projects. And how can something like that tie into this process of giving like a framework for Goxcoins being both legitimate and to be considered, I guess you could say, a tradable asset on other exchanges? Do you see that not only could you have a legal framework built with it, but then you could maybe convince other exchanges to allow these to be exchanged on them as well?
Sure. When we first started this process, there was a couple of exchanges that expressed interest in trading these Goxcoins so that users have an ability to trade them for Bitcoin. And I think it's important to emphasize, like Adam mentioned earlier, we don't want to give people the false expectation that one Goxcoin is going to equal one Bitcoin. It's clear that mt.gox has lost or had stolen a lot of Bitcoin. And so these would be coins that trade at some substantial discount to the regular price of Bitcoin. And it would really depend on how that recovery process is coming, either for the lost keys or the stolen funds. And so people would over time speculate, and the price would fluctuate based on how well those recovery processes are going or how poorly those processes are going. But I just want to set expectations that this would be something that would likely trade at a very steep discount to regular Bitcoins. I do think it's important, like Peter and Adam have mentioned, that this is a bad situation, and this is sort of the least bad option, right? This isn't a perfect solution, and there are
something's better than nothing, right?
Right. There are rough edges around how you issue them correctly, and getting Gox to cooperate by providing the data or issuing them unilaterally, as Adam mentioned, by a group that's basically doing a class action lawsuit. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's probably the best solution that we've been able to come up with or think of, and waiting for the courts for years to hash it out. And as Adam emphasized, they're going to do it at some price that's probably a lot lower than the real value of Bitcoin over time. The solution avoids a lot of those issues. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity to leverage the technology the community has here in order to do what we can to make the best of a bad situation. There's even been talk of the logo for this project should be lemonade, right? Because we're making it's not funny because a lot of people have lost a lot of funds, and it's a very serious matter. But add a little levity to the fact that we're trying to make the best of the situation that we can. So yeah, I mean, certainly the project is still in an early phase, and we're looking for the community to give us input and for the community to continue encouraging Gox to go down this route versus some other route that would lock up everybody's funds for a very long time, and sort of presenting this as a solution. So that's the frame that I'm thinking about it in.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.